Today we're going to be taking a look-see-backsy at my favorite Easter spring projects from last year and, well, maybe the year before. We have done spring. These are Easter, which are more focused on the reason for Easter, which is Jesus. So let's get started with project number one. So for this project, I've chosen two boards. They're pretty worn, especially this one, and I love that. It's imperfect because we are not perfect, and that's why Jesus came to die on the cross for us, extending his grace so that we can be redeemed. So I'm going to cut down this imperfect board to about 15 inches, and then I'm going to cut this one down to about 20 inches. My ruler doesn't go that far. And then I'm going to just lay one over the top of the other. Some people might take this shorter one and cut it in half so that they can lay, half of each board on the side of the longer board, but I'm going to lay it over the top, so it kind of gives me that layer to be able to glue floral to and stuff, that kind of 3D, jump. All right, so here I am, of course, cutting both of my boards down, and then I'll come in and go ahead and sand everything down here. I'll do a little painting on these boards, but not a whole lot because I want them to remain that rustic imperfectness, and then the florals will come along kind of, expressing, the grace of Jesus and making that rustic cross look beautiful. All right, so now I'm using some wood glue, and I know my finger, I don't know what it is about wood glue. I can't stand it on my fingers, but I'm using it here because, I always use a paintbrush. And then I'm going to place my board on top here, and then I'm not going to clamp it because I'm going to come in with 3 1¼ inch nails and just hammer it down. So between the wood glue and the nails, this cross will be nice and stable. All right, and next up, I have a woodward, Grace. I use my wood laser to cut it out. You can find lots of woodwords at like Hobby Lobby, or just use single wood letters. You can buy packages of wood letters. You could paint it on, if you're a beautiful penist. I made a word if you have beautiful handwriting. You could paint it on or whatever. So, you've got options there. And then I'm coming in with my Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color drop cloth. Again, I did this a couple weeks ago. I grabbed the wrong jar that's all thick, and I'm like, I'm not getting the right jar. So I'm brushing it on thick and then spraying it with water to kind of, make it more runny, I guess, to paint. And then I'm going to dry it off here. And then I'm going to come in and sand most of it off. I want to see quite a bit of wood through it, but just a little bit of paint. So then you're like, well, why did you paint so much? I don't know. It's like, I feel like I got to have enough paint on there so that when I take it off, if I, take off a little more than I want, there's still enough on there. Whereas if I don't put enough and then I sand it off, then I don't have enough and I got to go paint again. So that's my thought process for the whole thing. Now I'm coming in with some black paint mixed with water, doing a little bit of splatters. I'm sure I'm getting some on Boston's bum. All right, now I'm coming in with some florals and greenery and things like that. All of these come between Walmart and Hobby Lobby where I purchased them. And I just tried to, this one's my favorite. Comes from Hobby Lobby, a great big stock of it. Adding in the florals, which I love. These ones are my favorite. The one I glued down just there. Ranunculus. I sound like I'm saying binoculars. Those are my favorite flower. I love it. And then bringing in just some of these different greeneries off some other florals, rip apart, and some little squigglies. Just trying to add a lot of texture. And now, I put the one board over the other, right? So it gives me that kind of stair-step look too. So some flowers are a little bit further and some are a little bit lower. And no, I'm not a florist here. I'm not a floral designer, but I think I make it look pretty decent. But I love, love, love the rustic of the wood and, the painting and the splatters, and then you come in and you just bring these gorgeous, florals in, and it's just that relationship with Jesus, right? It's just that relationship. He comes in, he makes us clean and makes us all beautiful again. Right, just about done with the floral part, and then we'll come in and add just a little bit more. Did I even say that Grace word I was going to spray paint? well, you saw the picture. I spray painted it with matte spray paint, okay? I think I was talking off on some other tangent. All right, this ribbon, one of my favorites from Dollar Tree, so I just tied it into a bow, left really long tail, so I'm kind of gluing that in between the flowers. And then I'm coming in and just a little bit more paint to make it a little bit brighter white, because the spray paint was just not quite bright enough to stand out a little bit. I wanted that gray sword to kind of really stand out. And then, of course, I'm going to glue it on here using my Beacon Fabrica glue over to the right here. And once I get this word on, that makes this beautiful project complete. Let's move on to project number 2. For this project, I'm going to use lots of fabrics here. I'm going to use this placemat I got at the thrift store because y'all know I like the texture. I use these a lot. I look for these every time I go to thrift stores. And then this is just quilted fabric I picked up at Joann's, already quilted and ready. This is fabric I got from Hobby Lobby. It's upholstery fabric. I think I got on sale like $15 a yard, which I don't pay that much, but beautiful. And this is like a coat I picked up clothing section at a thrift store, that boucle fabric, is that what it's called? You could use this from Dollar Tree, the same thing if you have any of that left. I just have a tiny little piece, but I wanted to use this because it is a little bit thicker and denser, so I'm going to use this. And then I picked up this quilt at Wayfair. It was on sale, twin size for, was it around $40? I know it's so pretty, but I'm going to cut it up because that's what I got it for. And I don't mind because it's machine made. I'll have a link down below for you. And then I do have a free pattern for you. It's going to come in 3 pages. So these 2 pages, it's like the top and the bottom, of course. You'll cut them out and then you're going to tape them together at the dash line to form your piece. And this is the head. This is the inner ear. Now at the inner ear, I've got it marked with an arrow here. That goes at the outer ear. You know what I mean? That's pointed toward the outer ear, just so you know. All right. And then, of course, goes right in there. And then I've got a patch for the forehead. And then I've got the legs, right and left leg. And you're going to have like an outer leg and an inner leg for each one if you want. Okay. You'll see how I'm doing that. And then the eyes, you can either cut them out of fabric or I use buttons that are about this size. I just traced around the button I was going to use. So a link to my blog, as I've said, in the description box. Here's the pieces cut out. Isn't it pretty? This is going to be pretty and whimsical at the same time. And I did cut it to about a 17 by 17. Here's my pieces. So I did cut out some extra batting. You don't have to. So this is the back piece, which is this. We'll go over it again because I cut them off camera. Here's the head. Again, I cut a little batting just to help lift it up a little bit. See how the head's lifted up off the back? Of course, that's this piece. And then these are the inner ear pieces, just like that. All right, and then the little patch. I cut it out of the same material as the back, but you could actually use a little bit of fur if you wanted a little bit of, fake fun fur. And then the legs, I did use both pieces. I cut the quilted fabric, and I cut the inner legs. I was going to use the rounded part, but then I decided I like that ruffly part. So here's what it looks like with the rounded part, how I intended it. But I'm going to use the ruffly of the placemat because I thought that looked pretty cool. Turn it around. You can do how you want. You don't even have to do the middle part if you don't want to. Right? There we go. And I do have a free printable for you. Now, I printed this onto fabric using my inkjet printer. There'll be about a little 4-minute video link in my blog. If you've not done that, you can do inkjet or laser printer. And I've got different sizes here because I wasn't sure what size I was going to want. And even though it's Worthy is the Lamb, and the pillow is whimsical, I still think it brings a great message, and I'm probably going to layer it with some of that Joann's quilted fabric. So I'm going to bring this about 1.5 inches from the top and the bottom, so I'm just going to make sure that how big, I'm checking here which size of the quote I need. So I figure, if I make it about this size, is it going to be about 1.5 inches from the top? So that's all I was doing there. And then I'll come in about 3 inches side to side. Okay, if you're a gluer, you can use hot glue or fabric glue. Start with your most bottom layer first, which of course your legs, and get those glued on. All right, then you're going to glue on your main body piece here, whether or not you use batting. And before you glue the head, if you want to like sew the buttons on, hand sew, you can. That's what I end up doing. Or you can just, do that first and then you can glue the head on. Or you can just glue the head and everything on and glue your buttons on, right? So glue your head, your ears, your cute little patch, glue your eyes on. Cute. All right. So as a sewer, I'm going to sew the legs first, and then the body portion on the top layer of fabric only. Okay. So here I am doing that. I'm sorry, I have my camera sort of positioned where you mostly see my hand, but so I tried to edit it so you see a little bit of what I'm sewing. I apologize for that. But, and also as I sew around the main like body of the cute little lamb, I do sew in that scallop, edge, because you see that, but you could just kind of go around in a circle if you want. But I sew as to bring in the scallops of that pattern. But again, I know this is whimsical looking. I don't want people to, I'm not making fun of the season or Jesus or anything like that. I just thought it was cute because lambs are whimsical and cute and we all love them. So I wanted to bring that in, that whimsy cute, but the fabric of the background of the pillow with all the roses and stuff makes it that beautiful. So that's how I thought of it. And then worthy is the lamb. That's how I tie it in together. Okay, that's all cute. Now I'm going to do the head part. You could just sew all of that on together, but I thought it would be easier since the pieces are a little smaller to like sew the inner ears and the little middle head patch on first, and then as I'm coming right here, then sew the head onto the rest of it. And you definitely want, like I said earlier when I was showing sewing my paper in project number 2, you definitely want, like, this is a size 14 needle because you're going through a lot of layers of fabric here. Okay, and then once that's done, we're going to get the eyes on. This is a very simple pattern, I think, so hopefully you guys like it. Buttons, you could put twine through the center of the buttons and then just glue them on with your fabric glue or hot glue. I've done that many times, just glue them on with my fabric glue. But for some reason today, I chose to take some thin twine and sew them through the fabric. It's just whatever I'm feeling at the moment. It makes no difference, especially if you're using like the Beacon Fabri-Tac glue, and if you just glue the buttons on, those things are going to stay. All right? So we'll get that going through. I've got the first button on. I'm coming back through, getting the second button on. And again, I don't know, I just feel like someone's going to try and call me out on it. This might look whimsical, but it still, to me, reflects Easter. Because, I've got a little lamb here with googly eyes, and then I'm saying worthy is he, and I don't want that either to, I hope you know what I'm saying. A lot of people have beautiful, whimsical Easter decor still reflecting Jesus in their homes, and so that's what I want to do with this. All right, once that's all done, I'm just kind of, what I'm going to do, I got my pieces cut so that, I still have that 1.5 inches from the bottom like I do at the top. And then I've got like another piece of fabric here that I cut off of. And worthy is the lamb. I chose the size. If you're a gluer, you can glue it. I'm going to go ahead and just sew around it. Of course, off camera, we've seen enough sewing today. And then once that's all done, it's time to get our pillow together. So grab your bottom layer, gluers and sewers. You're going to put it together wrong sides together because we're going to leave our seams out. And if you're a gluer, you're just going to come down, 3 full sides. If you've not done this before, right close to the edge between the 2 fabrics. And then about 3/4 of the last side. So you have, about a hand width opening for stuffing your pillow. This is a pretty big size pillow. I mean, 17 by 17. If you wanted, whether you're a sewer or a gluer, you could buy like pillow forms that are like the 16-inch size, and you could sew or glue around 3 sides, put your pillow form in and then sew or glue that last side if you want. I'm just going to stuff it with normal stuffing because, you know, I've got like a ton of that. So I'm going to follow through with that as I usually do. All right, we're going to get this finished up. We're just about to the end here. All right, so here we go, looking cute with some kitty tails in the way, and I'm just going to start stuffing, of course. I don't stuff all of it on here. That's pretty boring. I'm really with that statement today, huh? That's pretty boring. I'll do it off camera. That's pretty boring. I'll do it off camera. Once you stuff it, you can sew or glue that opening closed. Okay, and here that is all finished. Now, you could stop here, but I want this to look kind of a little bit like old quilts. So I like to take sandpaper. It really doesn't matter the grit. And I, just my little hand sander, and I would just scrape it along those outer edges we left out to make it look like you just really cut up a battered quilt. And that makes this project complete. Let's roll into project number 3. For this project, I'm going to be using this one wood board from Dollar Tree and then just kind of some, salvage pieces from my wood pile. This is actually like a tongue and groove board. I'm going to use the side that's not so groovy. And I'm going to cut this first one down to about 15 inches off camera because it's boring to watch. And this one down to about 20 inches, okay? So also on my laser machine, I cut out these words. I will have a free printable for you. Link to my blog will be in the description box for all the printables, the PDFs, PNGs, and patterns for today. And I'm doing 2 of each word. I'm going to super glue them together so that makes them like really strong. Because a lot of times when they hang off of things, they tend to get bumped and then a little edge falls off, but by super gluing 2 pieces together makes them nice and sturdy. Of course, I'll skip ahead a little bit. I'm sure you don't want to watch it all, but as I'm doing it, I'm sticking it to this tape so that off camera again, because it's boring to watch, I can take them outside and then do a little spray painting with them. And I'll be using just this Rust-Oleum Camouflage Matte Black Spray Paint. Had to say that slow. Okay, while that paint is drying, we're going to do a process. We haven't done it in a while. I'm going to use this polyacrylic. Needs to be water-based. If you use this, I'm using the clear matte. And I purchased from Etsy some music. How Great Thou Art. I actually had to remove the color from it because it was really yellow when I went to print it out, and I didn't want it yellow. So if you like this, you might, pay attention to the color of the stuff you're using. Now we're going to do this paper to wood transfer. If we print it right side out and then we flip it over to do the transfer, it's going to be backwards. So make sure if you do this process, you mirror image it when you print so that when the process is done with what we're doing, the words will be right side up. Okay, now I'm just going to kind of just show you a little bit, skip ahead. It's nothing exciting. Boy, today's just nothing exciting. I'm just cutting all the papers to fit. I end up using just 2 sheets of this, so, really cost effective here. And I'm just going to cut to fit, like I said, each of the pieces. And it's okay if there's little bitty pieces and things like that. It just gives it personality. Bella's helping, of course. All right, now what we're going to do once everything's cut, I'm going to just start painting this on the wood. Now on this longer piece, I didn't paint it enough, and it's going to be hard to explain, but you want it to be like a medium thickness, okay? And you could use Mod Podge for this effect. I don't think I said that. A medium thickness, which basically is I want it to start to pull up but not be pulled up, because when I'm done with this, you're going to see how it looks that a lot more of it, the paper, came off in the rubbing process. There's a little space up there in the middle because that one piece is going to go across that, so I'm not worried about filling that in. But yeah, this board, I didn't quite get it thick enough. And the other board, I actually get it nice and thick. Once you've got it on there, I'm just going to, use my little brayer and roll it on. And I can tell at this point that it's not real thick. I don't know if I left it in here, but when I lift it up, it's wrinkled. There's wrinkle spots, and I have to like press it down. Like when you Mod Podge something, the paper kind of wrinkles up. So I know I didn't quite get enough on there, but I can't redo it. This one I got enough. Can you see how it almost looks pooly, but not pooly? Not in the center, because that part doesn't matter, but along the main parts of the board. All right, so there's just a fine line. And it's not going to make a difference. It's just going to make it more rustic, and I'll show you that in a minute. But now maybe you can see here really how kind of almost thick it looks. Yeah, that's kind of how thick you want it. The other one, it was just too thin of a layer. I don't know how to explain it. You just kind of got to work with it and try it out. But same process, laying it down, and then I will bring in the brayer and smooth it out. And this one doesn't get any wrinkles when I, go to look at it a little bit later. All right, while that's drying, I'm just taking my one board here and I'm putting a couple of tiny little holes in it, about 1.5 inches in from the sides, maybe 1/4 inch down from the top. And I'm not going to show the whole process of this board as I'm doing it because I end up not liking, because I paint it. And I end up not liking that, and so I redo it all off camera, but I left this part in to show you what I did because I didn't film the other one. So here I start out by staining it, and when I redo the board, I stop at the stain process, okay, because the paint doesn't look right. Here it is, you can see painted, and I sanded it, but I didn't show that because we're going to kind of throw this one out anyway. Now I have some wire here, and I don't remember what gauge it is. I just kind of do a couple of little twirls and then cut a piece off, and then I'm winding it through those tiny little holes that I drilled, both sides. And then on the back side, I'm going to push the wire down. It's going to make us look like we, hung this little sign with wire onto our board, basically onto our cross. Now the wire sticks up, all right? So we want it to lay level, so I'm just gluing down some cardboard here to make it all level all the way across. All right, now we're going to start our process, and basically this is a paper to wood transfer process. I like to use a sponge and water, and some people use very little water. I like to use a lot of water, but the first thing I'll do is just kind of get it on there and get the paper just initially wet. Okay, and then I just scrub with the sponge. I don't use the scratchy part, just the sponge, and it takes time, and I'm just going to show you this little bit because I'm going to do the rest off camera. And basically you can scrub with the foam or the sponge, you could rub it with your fingers, a little bit of both, and you're just trying to get that milky white paper layer off the back. Sorry to say you'll never get it completely off because I've tried and tried and tried as I've done this process a million times, but you want it off enough so that the wording and stuff basically looks transparent on your wood. I don't know how some people get it all the way off. I don't know if it's what I'm using or whatever. I just printed it onto some, paper I had, nothing exciting, wasn't any special paper. Here's what that looks like. Now, as it dries, it's going to get all milky white again, so you might want to repeat the process a couple of times, but I'll finish the rest of this pretty much off camera. I'll show you this one here as I'm kind of wiping it off and finishing it up. Here's what it looks like. And then I want you to see the difference. See how the paper on this is all like whole and still intact? It was because I used enough of the stuff. Now the longer board, I want you to see this. See, it's because I didn't use enough and a lot of it came off as I was rubbing. Okay, but that's okay. We're going to make it work. Now I want it to stay kind of this wet look and not too much milky come out. So a couple of years ago, I'm like, how can I make it look like milky and not keep rubbing because I can't get this paper fibers off. So what I do is I re-wet it and then I use Mod Podge while it's still wet. I don't know how I figured that out. I'm like, well, Mod Podge seals stuff in, right? So why don't I put Mod Podge over it when it's still wet and it'll seal it in? And it actually works pretty decent. So I re-wet the whole thing and now I'm just coming in with that Mod Podge and just sealing right over the top. Again, it's okay that the bottom words, a lot of it is off versus the other board. We're gonna make it work and look good. Don't worry. I was worried, but don't you be worried because we'll make it look good. Now what I'm going to do is to take Distress Oxide ink and Vintage Photo, and I just kind of want to rustic it up a little bit more. So I'm just rubbing it on a little bit with the finger dauber, adding in some colors. But Distress Oxide kind of has a little bit of a green tone to it, and that's okay. We'll make it look good. But we're going to do both boards, okay? And then just kind of filling it in. We want to make them both sort of match a little bit better. And then I'm going to come in with just some Waverly Antique Wax, just kind of, yeah, it's mixed with water, but just kind of brushing it on full strength and just kind of getting that little bit of green tone gone, but looking good. And then I will come in and I'm going to sand around the edges on the wood to kind of brighten around the perimeter a little bit. It's just all these little micro things you do to make it look better. And now I'm going to pause it here in just a second. By doing all that we did on this board, you don't see the difference, the outline where all the paper came off as much. Do you know what I mean? We kind of blended that into the wood a little bit so it's not so in your face. Now what I'm going to do, I'm pleased with how it's going to look, how it's going to work out. So I'm just using some wood glue here to glue this on. I'll clamp it up, and then once that's dry, you know, off camera, I'm just going to put like 3 nails in the middle as well, just to, you know, make sure it's all nice and secure. But I let this set about 10 minutes before I do that process. But I don't film hammering in nails because, again, that's boring. All right, now here's my sign all done and ready. It's just stained. I did the little, you know, wire, everything, but it looks much better than the one painted board. And then what I'm doing is I'm just gluing down my words here. Now, you could use the PDF or the PNG into like electronic file and cut it out in vinyl, or the PDF, you could print it out on some pretty scrapbook paper and then cut that out to fit your sign however you want to do it, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and glue this down right in the center. And I was almost going to be done here, but I'm like, it's missing something. Of course we're going to splatter. So I've got black paint mixed with water. We're going to do a little splattering to kind of bring it all together and unify it. And then it's a little, I can't believe I'm going to say this, a little bit too rustic for me still. So I'm going to add some flowers. I've got some pinks and browns, some pretty flowers. I've got them laid in the position I want them, but not glued down yet, because I thought, again, this project is like, I didn't show you this because it's boring. I didn't show you that it's boring, but I did show you this because it's boring as you know, a half hour laying flowers in the position I want, but now they are where they want. So I'm going to come in and glue the flowers down how I want it. And I think this just kind of brings that feminine, you know, beauty to it, right? We have the rustic Easter of the cross and the meaning of Jesus dying on the cross for our sins, but then we bring in the beautiful floral as Jesus died for our sins. It made us all new, right? And beautiful. So that was my intent here. Using this jelly ribbon here from Dollar Tree, I love it. So that was what I used for the little bow I tied off camera. I love it because it's not just a sheer ribbon. I say this a lot, but it's actually really thick and slightly sheer. It's just a good quality ribbon. Anyway, gluing a few more flowers on, decided I need 1 or 2 extra. And then once I get all these flowers on, that makes this project complete. You want another one? Okay, let's go with project number 4. For this project, I have a lot of fabrics here, but you really only need like a base, some leaves, and florals. You can do it in like 3 fabrics or 4 once I show you everything. So my base pillow fabrics, what I always use, this is Waverly brand from Walmart, 100% cotton. It's like a cream color, kind of really thick like a duck cloth, okay? And then this is just a, you know, a cotton print also from Walmart. As usual, you know, I'm going to be using some batting to add some extra thickness, you know, like a little bit of a quilted look. You can get that from Walmart as well by the yard or in a bag. Both of these came from Walmart. I just want to use 2 different color greens here for some leaves and a stem. And then I chose 3 fabrics for floral. Both of these top 2 came from Hobby Lobby. This bottom one, actually, I found a really inexpensive sheet set off of eBay because I was trying to find a floral that I liked, a small print. So this is a pillowcase I'm cutting up. It works perfectly for some fabric, right? And in these 2, I think the corduroy came from Hobby Lobby, and this is just some material like a grain sack material. Again, I bought off eBay. All right, so I will have a free printable for you. Link to my blog will be in the description box for all the printables today. This talks what you need for the main pillow size, which is 15 by 15, a secondary fabric if you want that, 13 by 13, optional to cut batting, and a third fabric for scripture verse that we'll be using. And then I just hand-drawn some pieces here. A heart shape we're going to be using for flower petals, a stem, a leaf, and 2 center pieces. You could just use 1 if you want. Optional, you can definitely cut batting for all of them as well. Again, link will be in my description box to my blog for this printable. So I've got my pillow base pre-cut, again 15 by 15, all right, 2 pieces. I've got a top piece because I wanted a secondary fabric, 13 by 13. I cut 2 pieces because it's kind of thin, but you only need 1, and then I cut 2 pieces of batting. And then for each of my heart shapes, I cut out 2 pieces of fabric and 2 pieces of batting for thickness, okay? I wanted it to look really thick and quilty. And then again, I cut 2 different pieces for circle. The corduroy is a kind of a thick material, so I just cut 1 of that and 2 batting. And then again, this kind of grain sack material, I just did 1 and 1. Then the stem, again, see, it's kind of wonky. It's all hand cut. 2 pieces of material, again, because that's the way I want it, and 1 piece of batting because I want it thick but not too thick. I want it to look more in the background. The leaf, I went with 2 pieces of material. Again, you only really need 1, 2 pieces of batting, and I designed it so it kind of fits right in the curve of that stem. Okay? And then here's the 2 pieces of batting for the scripture. Now I have a free printable for you on the scripture. I printed mine onto fabric from my inkjet printer. In that blog link, there will be a link how to print onto fabric from an inkjet printer. Until about 2 or 3 days ago, maybe a week, it's quite a span, isn't it? I didn't know if it worked with the laser printer, but I had a really sweet subscriber email me and she told me it did work. Now hers printed a little bit light, so she ran it through twice, but it didn't smudge, it didn't smear, so it should work with your laser printer as well. So back to the main pillow design. If you don't want to use batting, you just want to use a secondary fabric on top, all right, you can take that batting out, and if you're a gluer, go ahead and just glue that secondary material on top. If you're a sewer, you can go ahead and sew that material on top to the top layer only. If you want to use batting and all that, and you're a sewer, I'm not going to sew it down first because it's going to be too thick, because I want to sew all my other pieces here down as well. And with all the batting on those, it's just too thick. Okay, but if you're not using the batting and all that and you're a sewer, you can, sew down your first layer onto your first main fabric piece, and then you can sew the other pieces on as well. But I'm doing it off of that main fabric piece of the pillow because it's going to just be too thick. So now what I'm doing, if you're a gluer, I'm just kind of spot gluing everything together here because I'm going to take it all to the sewing machine. Spot gluing is easier. I don't have to pin it all, right? But if you're a gluer, go ahead and glue it all together normally, however you're doing it. If you're adding batting and all that, glue all your pieces together really well. I'll just go ahead and do all the rest off camera here. And then what I'm going to do is cut down my quote to size. Yes, I'm peeling it off of the paper, but again, watch the video if you haven't done this before. Using my rotary cutter to just, get it to the size I want, which is 4.5 by 5.5. And then I'm just pulling on the fabric strings around it just to give it a little bit of a frayed edge so it's not so nice and neat. And then I'll spot glue that as well. And then next we'll get our pieces all into position on that secondary fabric, that brown fabric. Sewers, watch kind of where you lay things, because if you're going to sew around the perimeter and sew it onto your first fabric, I'm giving myself about 1 inch room around my pieces, so I have plenty of room to sew around the edge of that fabric there, okay? Now, these 2 pieces, I'm just going to sew by hand, not by hand. I'm going to sew it with the sewing machine and then just glue it on top of that flower because otherwise it just gets really thick. With my machine, it's just too thick to sew all those layers. Now we're just moving into just showing you a little bit of the sewing here. Now, if you're a gluer, even if you're a sewer, maybe you want to, obviously glue it all down. Sewers glue it all down, but do some hand sewing with some cute, even just straight stitches, and add those around it and give it a cute country look that way. You don't necessarily have to use the sewing machine, obviously, to add stitches around it. And so here it is, those sewn. I left my edge of my stem hanging off a little bit because I thought it was a little bit fun. Now what I'm going to do is start adding my petals. I'm just going to kind of spot glue those down. Gluers, you're just gluing everything down into position. All right. I'll go ahead and spot glue down the scripture here and, of course, take it to the sewing machine. Now, I know the scripture isn't the normal, scriptures we see for Easter, he is risen, that kind of thing. But to me, it's still a scripture. To me, it still represents Easter. It's beautiful. It represents new hope. And, that's what Easter is about, right? Part of it. So here I am all done and ready to go. And we're going to add our secondary piece onto our fabric. Going to go ahead and sew that on. Gluers, you're sitting here waiting, right? Because you're all done. You've glued all this down. You've glued your flower portions and everything down. So we're just going to get that little bit of sewing in there. If you let your stem hang off a little bit, make sure you lift that up to sew under it. Don't sew over the top if you want. Now we're going to put the whole thing together, and if you're a gluer, you're going to come between the two main fabric pieces, go all the way around and leave an opening for stuffing. If you're a sewer, it's going to look like this with our opening for stuffing, and then go ahead and stuff it as full as you want it. Right? I'll just show a little bit here because we all know how to stuff a pillow. And then gluers and sewers, once you've got it stuffed to how you want it, either glue it closed or sew it closed. And here mine is already done and ready to go by the magic of editing. And here's Bella for a little bit of what's mom doing. All right, we're going to go ahead and add the flower center in here. I'm going to go glue that on. Of course, she just sits right next to it, so make sure I don't glue her tail on in the process. And then I left a space open here for a little twine bow. If you don't want a bow, you could totally add another petal there and add like a bow in the center of the flower, right? But I wanted it down below that, center of the flower, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that on. And that makes this project complete. We're halfway there with project number 5. This project is quick and easy, but I think it makes a statement. I'm using this 8x8 board I found at a thrift store for $1. Any 8x8 size or however big you want it will work. And a couple of these chunky slat boards from Dollar Tree. You could use the thin slat boards if you want, or something like this as well from Dollar Tree and cut it up. Anything will work if you want to do the look I'm doing. What I'm going to do is just cut the length so it only hangs off about 1/4 inch off each side of the bigger board. So here it is all ready. I'm going to use my hard to read Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water for a very inexpensive stain. And then I will use my Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color Drop Cloth. I love to use this Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water for a stain because, what is it, $6 or $7 a jar, and then you add water to it. Stuff goes a long way. It dries really nice. And, depending on the amount of water that you add to it, it can be lighter or darker for your taste. I will sand everything off camera, distress it a little bit, outside with my electric sander. I like to do that. And then on this one, I'm just coming around the edges and the sides. And then I'll do the same on the back around the edges because we're going to cover the center. So here everything is all distressed up, just a slight distressing around the edges of the big sign. And I've already pre-cut some paper to fit front and back. And you can see it's just about, 1/8 of an inch shorter than the actual wood itself because I like a little bit of that wood to show. Otherwise, why did I paint it? Now I'm taking taking my papers to my sewing machine. I do like to sew on them. I just sew on it like it's normal fabric. Just, I use all polyester thread. Cotton will work fine. And just, and I go back and forth from fabric to paper. Doesn't dull my needle or anything like that. If you wanted some stitches on your paper, you could, just make cute little dash lines with a Sharpie marker. And now I'm just showing a little bit. I'm cutting out part of the quote, as you can see, in wood with my wood laser cutter here. I will have a free printable for you. We'll discuss that a little bit later, but I'm just showing you a little bit of the process here. So here I am just using my Waverly wax mixed with water, and I'm just doing a little stain on this, nice and easy. I will distress it a little bit just by hand, holding the woodward in my hand because it is, kind of real fragile lettering, but, we'll get to that in a minute. And now I'm using my drop cloth paint, and I'm just painting this chunky, wonky heart. They come in a set of 4 from craftingwithkimber.com. I'm just using one of the sizes. It comes with like 4 sizes, front and back, because you'll see the back a little bit, and I want it to look nice and finished off, or you might see the back a little bit, I don't know. And here I am just really lightly sanding it. I don't want it over distressed, but I just kind of want to lighten the edges up just a little bit, again holding it in my hand to keep it nice and safe as I sand it. All right, and I already have a paper cut out that I've sewed around for the heart because it was something I was going to use on another project, so it's all done for me. And as you saw there, it's cut just a little bit short as well, so you see a little bit of wood around the heart. Now I'm taking the open end of my scissor blades, scraping along the edges of my paper so I get that little bit of a distressed look. It kind of gives it a little bit of shadowing, so it's going to kind of help it pop up off our wood a little bit. This is optional. You can do it or not do it. It's not a big deal. And then I'm taking that drop cloth mixed with water and the fan brush, dip it in the paint, wipe off the excess, and I tap the handle of the brush to add some splatters here. Okay, got those done, and I'll bring in my little heart here. And then we're going to move on to the next. So part of my quotes in wood, part of it is in vinyl, okay? I do have a free printable for you. I have a PDF and a PNG. Those of you with electronic cutting machines, you can take the PNG. Those of you with the PDF, if you're using scrapbook paper, download it, print it onto your scrapbook paper first, and then cut your scrapbook paper to fit your project, okay? I've done that many times. It's a nice way to, still get the same quote that I'm using for your project. So I'll go ahead and get my vinyl portion here onto my paper. Right, and then before I do anything, now I'm going to go ahead and add splatters on this. I wanted to get my vinyl quote on there first before I splattered this top portion. And I'll let that dry for a little bit so it doesn't smear. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue down my papers front and back. Definitely want to cover that back. Nobody wants to see the big A on the back side, right? Although I thought A1, A for Almighty, right? Almighty God, He's number 1. There you go. Glue the front on. And then I'll go ahead and use my brayer front and back so I make sure that's nice and secure and kind of spread that glue out a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and glue my papers onto the heart. I did one for the front and the back side, in case the back is seamed, although I don't really think you'll see the back, but just in case. And I do have glue on my woodward. It just took a while to get on there, so I spared you from that. I'm going to set that into position. And then I'm going to use Beacon Quick Grip Glue. I always have to say that slowly or I'll mess it up, to put my front and back little wood pieces on. You could use the Fabri-Tac. It would hold just fine, but I'm going to go ahead with the see, now I can't say it. The Quick Grip Glue, and get those into position and make sure I've lined it up. Once I get the back piece on, it takes about 10 minutes to tack and set up and hold, and then 24 hours to cure. And I'll use my ruler kind of on the side here and push it to make sure that it's all straight. And then it needed a little bit more something. It wasn't quite, the white splatter's not quite showing up for me. So I took black chalk paint mixed with water. You can see I've got the bottom covered up. I don't want any splatters on that. And just kind of adding a little bit more splatters to the front and to the heart. Then I'll go ahead and glue the heart on into position. Nice, easy project. And that makes this project complete. You betcha, we're on to project number 6. For this project, I'm using this wood from Dollar Tree. And off camera, I'm just going to cut these off to make it look like a wood tag. And then I'm going to use this wood cross from Dollar Tree. And at this point, I hadn't decided whether I wanted to use this. These come in like a bag at Hobby Lobby or like an actual metal washer there, but I do go with the wood piece. So my tag is cut, and then of course I sanded it off, and now I'm drilling a hole. Nice big drill bit here. And look, oh my gosh, we get to see all of Boston on video here. I left this in for you because normally we just see her bum. There she is. She's growing up. Her Maine Coon is coming out. All right, I'm going to use Waverly Antique Wax on this first and then bring in my Dixie Belle drop cloth. When it's light colored wood like this, and I know a lot of you have heard this spiel before, but we're always getting new, subscribers. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, glad to have you with us. I like to do the Waverly Antique Wax first, and then when I put the drop cloth over it and then I go to distress it, that dark color kind of comes up around the paint and it gives it more of that kind of 3D texture. And I'm doing both of these, paints, if you want to call them both paints, on these two pieces here. All right, so for my quote today, you will have a free printable. Link to my blog will be in the description box. I did the is and the word in vinyl. Of course, the worthy and the lamb cut out with my laser machine, but you'll have it PDF and PNG. So if you have electronic cutting machine, or the PDF if you want to trace it, and then paint it on yourself, however you want to do it. I'm going to use this matte black spray paint off camera to paint my wood words with. Okay. Again, you can use just wood letters if you want, or if you wanted to cover the top with paper and you wanted to use the PDF and print it onto your paper and then cut your paper to fit your wood tag. I did that a lot before I got an electronic cutting machine or a laser, and it looks just as beautiful. All right, here I am with the drop cloth, of course, getting that painted up, and then I'm going to come in and sand it up, just 120 grit sandpaper. I love how that wax comes out around that paint. Just gives it that more of a rustic look. And I love how this one, those big chunks that come off, I love how this just sanded right up. It's just makes my heart happy. Beautiful. All right, I'm going to use this scrapbook paper for my cross. I'm going to just trace out both sides. But I don't want the whole cross to be covered because I didn't paint it and distress it for nothing. So I'm going to come in on both sides about 1/8 of an inch or so. I'm going to redraw that perimeter. And then I'm going to cut it out. The back of the cross is going to be seen a little bit. So that's why I'm going ahead and covering the back. All right, so here I am cutting that out. Don't worry, you don't have to watch me cut both out. Just one. Almost there. Here we go. All right. Now you can see what it looks like. A little bit of wood around the perimeter showing. I'll cut it down a little bit more because not quite enough wood showing, but I'll get this one done. Love to take my papers to the sewing machine and sew on them. I just sew on them like the regular fabric. My old machine, used to have to do like a size 9 or 10 needle, but this one, like size 14, works on everything. You just have to play with your sewing machine and see if what needle works best. Because if they're too large holes, you need to go down, with your needle and then just sew, like I said, like it's regular fabric. If you want the look of stitching, but you're not a sewist, is that a word? Making it up, you can use like a fine Sharpie marker, make little dash lines around the edges, will look just as cute. And now I'm taking the open end of my scissor blades, I'm scraping along the edges of my paper, giving it a little bit more of a rustic look. That would just kind of help that paper pop up off that wood a little bit. And then I'll take my Distress Oxide ink and Vintage Photo and little finger dauber. And it's not really seen a lot here, but just kind of going around the edges, darkening those edges up. I do go back in and darken them a little bit more, but you don't have to watch that. You can just kind of see that I do it a little bit here. There, now it'll really pop up off that wood. Very nice. So I'll go ahead and glue those on into position front and back. And you, of course, don't have to do any paper on your cross. The reason I do paper, of course, is because It gives it a little bit more, decoration on our project. And I don't got to worry about trying to put wood filler in that hole and trying to cover the hole. Wood filler never really covers it. You always still see that round circle. So I'll go with scrapbook paper and cover it up. I'm using just a piece of tape here that I had my wood words on when I spray painted it so that I know where to start my word, and then just kind of keep it, level and straight across. I just kind of laid it there. Using my Beacon Fabrica glue, you can use Z6000 or like super glue, but I'm very confident in the Fabrica glue, so that's what I'm going to use here. Get that glued down, and then of course get the other one glued down. Again, just going to lay it here so I know where to start my word there. And of course, my vinyl is already down. Again, to remind you, I will have a link to my blog in the description box with the PDF, or you can take the PNG to your, electronic cutting machine program and work with it there. And I'll have the fonts listed as well if you want to just, print it up yourself with your computer or, in your electronic program or whatever. Silhouette or Cricut or whichever one you use. Because I think the PNG you still have to kind of clean the background and in between the letters. So you may just want your own fonts and do it yourself. All right, got that on there. And I chose black because I think it really stands out on the tag. And yes, again, of course, I'm bringing in my black paint mixed with water. Using my fan brush here, I'll put my glue bottle in front. And then I just tap the fan brush to add splatters. And I'll do all the way around, as you see, front, side, and back. Getting this over the other side, and I wipe it off the excess, because if I don't, then there's too much paint on the brush, and then when I begin to splatter, you get those long drips, and I can't stand those. All right, now everything's dried from the splatter. I'm just laying my cross where I want it, and then I'm just going to lightly mark where not to glue, because I don't want my glue seen from the back side, right? And then I'll again use my Beacon Fabrica glue and get this in place. Making sure on the back my glue's not seen, slide it in a little further. And then here I am just gluing down that little wood piece. I don't remember what these are called, but you can get a bag of them at Hobby Lobby in the, wood section. And pretty cheap, well, maybe $4.99, but you get like freaking 20 of them or something. All right, and then I'm coming in with that vintage photo ink and just inking around the edges of the tag and then around the words a little bit more so that it looks as distressed as kind of the cross. I'll even do a little bit on the cross around the edges, where it's just painted and stuff a little bit more, like you see here, just to kind of bring in a little bit more of that rusticness. I hope this project was easier for you, or not easier, easy for you to want to create it. Now I'm bringing in some of this wood from Dollar Tree. It's a little bit thick, but even my large twine that I get at Walmart was not thick enough. It looked like I was using string because our project is kind of chunky. So I'm just going to have a bigger knot and have it look thicker. Although this was the smallest diameter of rope that I've seen at Dollar Tree. Normally it's a lot thicker around, but I'll just make a nice tight knot here. Perfect. And then I'm just bringing in some of this kind of cream and black check ribbon I get from Hobby Lobby. Just do a little double knot here. Nothing fancy. I think I only show a single knot, but off camera I come back in with a double knot. And then one more thing. So our cross on the front makes this top heavy, right? Front heavy. So I buy these at Dollar Tree because we get to use it like the easel to help hold things up. So I'm just kind of cutting the top, each corner off, so it fits the tag a little better because it kind of stuck out the back of my tag, and then I'll just sand that. I'm not worried about painting the back or anything like that. It looks good enough. And then I'll use my Beacon Fabrica glue here. Glue this to the back. Our tag will now set up. It's nice and stable. That makes this project complete. As we head into project number 7, if you're still with me, put a cross emoji in the comments. Although I don't know if you can really call this a project, it's so super easy. So Dollar Tree has these crosses. Most of this project came from Dollar Tree. They have these ceramic plates. Now I chose the square ones because of the squareness of the cross. Okay, and then I'm going to use these magnets for the bottom because I love the butterflies on them. Although I see a little bit of the writing around the edges here because I'm going to glue the cross to the bottom for stability. Now you could leave it like that, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of paint it up. I'm using my only white paint I had was Apple Barrel, which I don't love. I will mix it sometimes with good cream chalk paint just to, you know, not be so white, but not be so cream either. But so it takes several coats to do this, but I'll set it in between, and you don't even notice because I'll take like 220 grit sandpaper off camera and just smooth that paint down a little bit, and I promise you won't notice it. I'm going to use this quick hold. Now this is made by the makers of E6000. I love it because it sets up, unlike E6000, in about 10 minutes so that you can handle it and maneuver it, but it is rock hard cement in 24 hours. So there's what you can see on the magnet. I flipped it around. See the one to the right, the one on the left, the green butterflies to the left, and the one on the right, the pink butterflies to the left, so that if you see any little bit of that around our floral accents, then they at least look like a right and left set of a pair. Now I let that set literally about 10 minutes. I'm going to come in and glue the plate to the top. Now I almost wish I had the round plates. I only had one because they are a little bit smaller, but I went with the square plates again, like I said, because of the squareness of the cross, and that's why I kind of went with those magnets as well for the bottom because of the squareness. They all kind of had that square edge to it. But the plate on top gives us more room to put more stuff if we want. I'm going to use some of these little pink flowers from Dollar Tree. I'm going to use some of my favorite little jelly ribbon from Dollar Tree, the darker mauve ones, some of these flowers from Walmart, and then just some bits and pieces of some greenery and stuff to start. Some of these squigglies like we used on the cross. You could just kind of squiggle some wire if you want. I don't end up using that, but I had some bits and pieces. And then some of this from Hobby Lobby. I love kind of the powdery look of it and the shade of the green. It's not that bright kind of plasticky green, so it looks nice. Got my little, you know, plasticky finger thing on my finger so I don't burn my fingers up here. Sometimes it's on my fingers, sometimes it's not, so I don't burn my fingers with the glue is what I'm trying to say. Use your little glue helpers. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot those words. Putting my flowers to the right, and then that little Hobby Lobby greenery to the left, and then I'm going to take that jelly ribbon. I made a simple bow, and I'm going to glue the pretty little Walmart flower right in the center of that. And then I'm going to add another kind of leaf over here I cut off separately. I just wanted it to be pretty again. And now we're over to the right side of our, well, I don't know if it's the right side. We're on the next candle holder, right? And I'm doing everything opposite of the other ones so that they can be a pair. So the other flowers like this on the other candle holder went off to the right. These are going off to the left, obviously. That's what opposite means, right? But just the same like setup of the greenery and everything. Another little bow here with our pretty ribbon. And then, you know, gluing in my beautiful flower and adding another leaf over here. All right, and then I have this floral punch. It is from Martha Stewart. If you can find it, great. I don't know anymore, but I love it because it's got, you know, one big butterfly and two teeny butterflies, and they are teeny. It might look big right now, but wait till I look at, this is the big butterfly I'm handling with my fingers. Yeah, I have to use tweezers. And I'm just doing a couple butterflies on each one. Tiny butterfly is like really tiny, but I like it because they just give this, you know, what do I want to say? Just a tiny touch of butterflies to make it pretty. So we have our cross, and then we have our, you know, they're just there. They're subtle. That's the word. Thank you, whoever yelled that at me. They're just nice and subtle. All right, so here is our candles. Again, candle holders, and the plate is big because I thought, you know, if you wanted to put big candles on it here, like from Dollar Tree, you know, or I'm going to make a little trio here. I like how it turns out. So what I found these at Dollar Tree in the pink and green, and I found these not at the same time as I found those magnets. They totally matched those magnets, because when I found those, I was like, oh my gosh, it matches those butterflies. And I found the butterflies like 2 weeks before these. And then these candles from Walmart, although I know Dollar Tree probably has, you know, the same ones as well, a little smaller. And then these from Dollar Tree, I like them, but why does Dollar Tree always make their battery candles like yellow? Why don't they make a white glow? That's all I want. But the yellow's pretty, but Dollar Tree, make white glowy candles, not yellow. But the trio on here, it looks beautiful, and that makes this project complete. It's time for project number 8. For this project, I'm going to be using 2 of these slat boards from Dollar Tree and 2 of these wood plank boards from Dollar Tree. Both are about the 12-inch length. And one of these wood hearts I got at Walmart, 59 cents or something, whatever wood heart you'd like. We're going to start off with some wood glue, and I am just going to attach both of these larger wood pieces together. And I'll go ahead and clamp those and let that set up. Once this is ready to go, I'm just going to tape off the top and bottom of my big board using the frog tape. It's about 1 inch width of tape. And then I'm going to tape off one part anywhere on the smaller boards. This is just so later I don't paint those, so they're raw wood to raw wood when we wood glue those together. I'm using Waverly wax mixed with water, Debbie's Design Diary DIY Little Black Dress paint. I'm going to use the wax mixed with water as a stain on the smaller boards. We're going to make this look like one of those scroll type projects, you know, top and bottom scroll using wood. Does that make sense? And in the little black dress, I'm going to paint the front and back of this. Now, originally, I was just going to do all paint, sand it, and then add my vinyl. And then it just was like, no, it just needs something. So if you want to do this project just doing nothing but paint and then doing vinyl or whatever, if you have an electronic cutting machine, it would look beautiful. But for me, it was like I just wanted a little bit more something to it. So once all of this is painted off camera, I will use my electric sander and distress all my wood pieces. Now I'm going to take that little heart and I'm just tracing it onto the back of some double-sided paper. And then I'm going to come in about 1/4 inch or so, and I'm going to redraw that heart perimeter. This is really easy to do. I always do this 99.9% of the time. I'll cut this out. This is what I like to do when I'm doing wood pieces and I add paper on top so that we just see that little bit of perimeter of wood around that paper. Gives it that little bit of dimension. And plus, you know, as I always say, why did we sit and paint distressed wood if we're not going to look at a little bit of it, right? This is what it'll look like with a little bit shorter cut all the way around. Now, this paper with all the little tags and stuff off of it, it comes from one of my very favorite paper packs called Romance Novel by Prima Marketing Ink. Those a lot of you question like my papers and stuff. Prima Marketing Ink is my very favorite, but I love this one because you can cut out little tags and stuff. So I'm just cutting out the little unforgettable. You could just print unforgettable off, you know, on your computer onto some pretty paper and cut it out. So right here, I'm cutting some cardstock. It's just some kind of embossed cardstock, cutting 2 pieces, a little bit shorter all the way around to fit my top and bottom wood planks here. So this is what it looks like. Now this paper here, it's my last sheet. I know you all are going to ask where I got it from. I've been hoarding it for like 2 years. It's by Pink Paisley. It's called London Market. I am sorry. I don't even think you can find it anywhere anymore unless someone's willing to give it up. But I've cut 2 pieces. The black kind of wood plank in the back I got from Hobby Lobby. And in this, I'm cutting to kind of fit the center of that so I can layer them on the main sign. You can see how it's cut a little bit shorter all the way around. Now we're going to use Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color Drop Cloth, and I'm just going to paint the front and back of my wood heart here. I'm just painting around the edges on the front because, you know, we're going to cover it with that paper we cut out earlier. But the back I'm covering completely in case for some reason, whichever way you turn the sign, you see the back of it a little bit, and I just kind of want it finished off. Okay, while all this is drying, ready to go, we're going to switch on over into using my sewing machine. And now I'm just sewing around all the edges of my paper. We've seen it all through this video, of course. This is what it looks like when it's done. But I just love to add this subtle look to it. I think it just gives it a nice kind of farmhouse texture to it. You know, once I started it, I can't not do it anymore. I'm just used to it, so you'll always see me doing this. So we're just finishing up on the papers here. Oh, that London Market paper. Yeah, now I'm using the wood glue. I've taken the tape off. You can see I've distressed everything, like I said earlier, and using the wood glue. And I forgot to kind of paint around the side. You'll see when I'm coming up. Use the wood glue. See when I lay the main sign on it, those little edges on the side there, I got to go back and like stain those. But that's okay. So anyway, I'm adding the top and bottom to my boards here, and then I will clamp that and, you know, let that set up. And while that's doing its thing and drying, I'm taking the open end of my scissor blades and I'm coming around, and as you can see, as I scrape along the edges, the front paper scraped, the back paper is not, and you can see if you like that look or not. I think it adds great texture to it. I learned this like in my world of mixed media scrapbooking days. It's just a great thing to add texture to your papers, and I've done it ever since. Okay, just finishing up here. And if you don't like it, don't do it. You know, I want you to love what you're making and the style that you love to do. This is just inspiration, and, you know, maybe try something new. And if you don't like it, don't ever do it again. All right, so for my quote today, this is, I've cut it out of vinyl. I will have a PDF for you and a PNG. I will have free printable link in my description box. So I'm going to add vinyl onto this. I think it's just beautiful. I think this song quote is perfect for an Easter project, goes beautiful with the roses and the music notes and that kind of thing. And I'm sure Hobby Lobby has some beautiful, you know, music note paper and stuff. I've seen it, or some beautiful florals that would be pretty to use. And then I want to just add a little something more to it. I just wanted to add a little bit of splatter. So I take my fan brush, that drop cloth paint I've watered down. I dip my fan brush into it, kind of wipe off the excess, and then I tap my fan brush to just get some little light splatters. I'm not doing it on every paper because then it's too much. So I've just picked papers that I wanted to use. Beacon Fabri-Tac glue today, and I'm going to glue my papers down. But now see how that sign looks all together, just painted in distress? You could totally do that way, but I'm like, I just want to add a little something more. So, you know, this is a way you can go with it, but you could totally just do all painted distress, add your vinyl to the center, and you're done. Just covering all my pieces here. Here comes the wood plank paper. You can see how I cut it short in the background so you can at least see that paint and distressing that we did, right, around the edges. And then I'm taking that little quote I cut out, and I've got just some cardboard here, and I'm adding a couple of layers to it to see how tall I want it. Yes, I want 2 layers. And I'm going to glue the cardboard together. And then I'm going to glue this onto the back of that paper. You can do the same thing if it's a sticker. And that will just allow that little, you know, word to stand up off of our heart a little bit like that. And then I'll just glue that to the center of the heart. Just gives it a little bit of definition. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue our main quote down onto our wood plank paper. Got to measure. I got to make sure I've got it all right. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue the heart down to the bottom. Now I haven't added a hanger to the top yet. I'm not sure if I want a hanger or if I want it to be like a rope hanger, but all I have left to do until I get that point is to add this heart, and that makes this project complete. We're near the finish line with project number 9. Hey, that rhymed. For this project, I am using a kit, Spectacular Wood Kit from craftingwithkimber.com. Now, this does come in 2 sizes. I'm working with a 12-inch size circle, but it does come with a 15-inch size circle. And I wanted something like this, so I kind of envisioned it up, and Kim and I worked on it together, and this is what we came up with. I love it. I love how the letters stack on top, kind of giving it a 3D look. I think you're going to love it. I'll be using a couple more pieces from craftingwithkimber.com with this project, but I'll have the links to all the product I worked on this down in my description box below. So for this sign, first thing I wanted to do is I kind of wanted like a two-tone, and so I taped off about the top third. I'm going to use Waverly Antique Wax. I mixed it with water, and Debbie's Design Diary DIY Little Black Dress chalk paint. I'm mixing that with water as well because I kind of want it more of a stained look, not just pure black paint. I end up mixing a little too much water in it, and so when I go to sand it off camera, it almost gets like a gray tone, you know, the distressing part of it. So I had to come back in and kind of do another coat on the top. So just kind of be cautious of that. If you don't mind more of a gray tone, you know, the more water and then you go distress it, a little more gray it's going to look after you've distressed it. But once I got that second coat on there and went back out and distressed it, I like how it turned out. I'm also just kind of, to finish off the back, I'm just kind of staining the back as well. Looks really good. This turned out just how I hoped that it would. Once that's all dry, I'm going to go ahead and move the tape down to the lower portion. You can see here it's a little bit on the gray side, but I go in and darken that up a little bit. You can see how that bottom is that gray tone that I was talking about, but I go, like I said, go in, darken it up a little bit. Looks a little more blacker. And then, of course, Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water, doing the stain on the top. I love this board, too, because Kim has also placed in those nice little score lines for us to kind of give us that shiplap look. I'm also coming in with this Waverly Antique Wax, mixed with water, of course, and just staining up my letters and my cross. I really wanted this just kind of that nice, kind of muted farmhouse two-tone look, and I think I achieved that with, you know, what I was going for. I'm going to use Dixie Belle Chalk Paint in the color Drop Cloth, as well as Dixie Belle Chalk Paint in the color Rustic Red. I'm bringing in some more product. This is hearts. They come in a set of 12 little mini hearts from craftingwithkimber.com. And then I also come in later with one other bigger heart, which I think comes in a set of 4. Again, I'll have those links down below. Painted those in the red color, the hearts in the red. And then I'm using that drop cloth. I kind of mixed it with water as well, so it wasn't full strength paint, just more kind of like a stain. So you see a little bit of that wood tone coming through on our happy word. And that way, when I go to distress everything, it just looks like perfection. Love how this turned out. Can I say that enough times for you? Distress everything off camera, showing my sandpaper, although I do use an electric sander because that's just a tad bit easier. And now I'm coming in I've got the bottom part of my sign covered with paper. I'm just coming in on the Waverly Wax stained areas. I've that drop cloth mixed with water, put my fan brush in it, tap off the excess, and then I'm just splattering that and my hearts. Now you can see the bigger heart and the 2 small hearts I'm going to use. I'm going to use Beacon Fabrica glue today to go ahead and attach my elements to the sign itself. You could use super glue, you could use wood glue, whatever works best for you. I have no problems with the Fabrica glue. It's going to hold just as good as super glue. But yeah, I love how these are kind of 3D elements. It just really makes it pop up off of those stained areas. Love, love, love. Getting the rest of our happy word on here. Perfectly wonderful. And then I'm going to get the little hearts. I'm going to put one beside left of happy and one to the right of the Easter word. And then this says a pretty beautiful thing. It's just from a sticker pack, you know, scrapbooking section like Hobby Lobby or whatever. And I'm gluing it onto some really thin cardboard, almost like cereal cardboard. And yes, I can put that through my sewing machine. But I'm doing that so that the sticker is a little bit more stable. And then I will actually use another piece of thicker cardboard underneath to kind of raise it up off the sign. But not thicker cardboard, but this thin type cereal cardboard runs perfectly through my sewing machine. And, I only just use the sewing machine just really for crafts and stuff. So I'm not worried about, messing up my machine or anything like that. It's the El Cheapy $50 sewing machine. So it works wonderful. Using the open end of my scissor blades, just going to scrape along the edges of that sticker so it's a little bit rustic. And this is some ribbon I got from Walmart, and I've just kind of got it into a bow, and I'm using a zip tie from Dollar Tree just to keep it into position here. Perfect. And that zip tie will get covered because I will, off camera, I use a little bit more of this ribbon and kind of cover around the top and bottom ends of that bow, and then I'll use the big heart over the center. This is just some box trim greenery I picked up at, was it Walmart or another local store, putting that in there and then gluing with hot glue. You guys know I rarely get out my hot glue, but I did for this. Putting that bow in the center there, and then I'm gluing my heart right over that. Off cameras where I'll cover the top and bottom of that bow so you don't see any of that zip tie from any angle. And then I'm going to place my little quote down below the cross. And that makes this project complete. It's time for our last project, number 10. For this project, I'm going to be using this vine basket. I got it from Hobby Lobby, like half off. I'm going to be using this wood slice from Dollar Tree, as well as this wood cross, although I do change to a different shape of a wood cross. And using these from Dollar Tree. And then I just picked up some lambs here from Walmart, and then some of these other florals from another local store around here. So really any kind of florals and things you want to work with. I love the look of these flowers, so I'm going to use these. And I'll bring in some more like box trim and that kind of stuff. First thing I'm going to do is I traced this wood shape onto some paper, and what I want to do is come in and just about a quarter of an inch in, I'm going to redraw the perimeter of that wood shape, because I do want to add some paper to the front of the wood just to, bring it in and make it a little bit more warming or warmth, I guess. And once I kind of retrace and draw that new pattern, I'm going to cut that out, and then it's going to allow a little bit of that wood perimeter of that wood slice to show, as you see here, and I like that. So for this cross, just kind of back and forth, and it pops right out. And then, okay, so my flowers, I'm not a flower arranger, and I probably spent a half hour off camera just to get it into this cute little ensemble. I tried to do what my cousin says, taller stuff to the back, going down in size, that kind of thing. I added in some box trim, and anyway, sorry I did it off camera, but I'm not going to show you my imperfect not so expertise flower arranging. I did the best I could. You do you and make it beautiful. And just going to use some zip ties from Dollar Tree, and I use a couple of them to get everything into shape, where I want it, so it stays there and I don't have to try and rearrange it again. But I do add a little bit more to it coming up as we use that basket. So now what I'm doing is taking this paper and taking it to my sewing machine and sewing around the perimeter of it. So here you can see my different shape cross. I did also get this at Dollar Tree. I'm bringing in that Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water again just to give it a stain. And I'll do the same thing on my wood slice, and then again off camera, because I don't know, I just don't feel the need to show you I'm sanding a lot of stuff. I just use my electric sander and sand and distress it all. I'm doing the back of the wood slice too, just so that it looks finished off if for some reason you can see it from the back side. It does get a little bit darker here, but I sand that off and make it look nice, and there, now you know the whole story. So for this, because he first loved us is my quote, I'm using vinyl to put this on to my paper. And yes, I'll have a link to my blog in the description box where you can find the PDF and PNG versions of this quote available if you'd like to use it for your own project. Next, I'm taking the open end of my scissor blade, scraping around the edges, gluing it with my Fabrica glue onto that wood slice, and then I'm finishing up with my Dixie Belle drop cloth paint mixed with water and adding splatters to the cross and the wood slice. Now what I'm doing is just taking some of my Fabrica glue and some of this moss that I get from Walmart, and I'm just gluing it up and around that zip tie as well as down on the stem, and then I'm also adding moss into the basket, and then once I add the both together, you know, all those stems and everything will be fully hidden and will fit nicely into that basket where the other moss is. So I get everything inside the basket. I tuck more moss in and around the sides and around the back to cover up all those stems and everything. Get it exactly how I want it. And then I'm going to tuck my cross in. Just kind of, I glue it in off camera a little bit, but just kind of tuck it in among the flowers there. Bring in a little bit more box trim. Get that arranged and looking nice how I want it. And then I go ahead and cut the rope kind of in the center on that sign there so that I could wrap it around the top edge of that basket. And then, like, you know, tie it into the basket, and I also glue it underneath that slice to the top of the basket as well so it doesn't move. But I thought kind of cutting in half and then wrapping it around the rim of that basket and then tying it in a knot would, you know, help keep it in place, but a little extra security gluing it underneath. And I'll just kind of cut off the excess and tuck the ends in, and then once I do that, that makes this beautiful, easy project complete. So I hope you enjoyed a look-see-backsy at my favorite Easter projects from the last year and the year before, maybe even the year before that. I went back pretty far because I usually just do like all spring, but this time I wanted a video centered on favorite Easter projects because Jesus is the reason for that particular season, and that's what these projects are all about. Make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know which project was your favorite, maybe one you forgot about, maybe it's one you haven't seen. Which one do you want to make right now? Please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps support me, helps my channel to grow, as I always say. And if you walked in here for the first time, you're just checking things out, you're digging what you saw, make sure before you click off, you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on another video from me. Now, before I go, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. In the Bible, the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 13, it says, "And when you have finished the whole fight, you will still be standing." It's a verse with a powerful presence, a direct statement of strength, and it's an undeniable truth. It displays confidence and security in God, who gives you the ability to believe in the fact that what he states inherently says, it will happen. This fact is a piece of evidence containing excellence and quality, matching no other. And within this last statement, one word stands out as invaluable: quality. Did you know that the word quality is divided into three related categories: completeness, correctness, and clarity? So how does this relate to God's word? Since God is truth, his word sets the standard, holding ultimate judgment and authority over all aspects of life. To ensure its validity in quality, as mentioned in an online article that I found from Microsoft, you must envision how these qualities fit together. The key idea is to imagine that your data, in this case God's Word, contains pieces like a puzzle, and to extract its value, you must assemble that puzzle, measuring the quality against the three categories, again, which are completeness, correctness, and clarity. So let's take a look at this. Completeness. Do all the pieces of the puzzle contain all the data you need? Correctness. Does the data reflect characteristics suitable for usage? Clarity. Is the relationship of the data relevant to you? Does it connect to you? When you're trying to assess data quality, the Microsoft experts point out that there is ample guidance out there. However, in the Bible, the book of Psalms chapter 32 verse 8, it emphasizes that God serves as your guiding light. That verse says, "I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye upon you." Therefore, trusting in God's guidance, let's measure the data from Ephesians 6:13 within the three categories that Microsoft gives us to see if God's word has qualitative authority and adds value to your life. Completeness. Does this verse, Ephesians 6:13, have all the data you need? Correctness. Does this verse reflect characteristics suitable for usage? And clarity. Does this verse have data that is relevant to you? Does it connect to you? If you have faith, you believe in the truth, and you believe in the Word of God, and you answered yes to all three categories, then according to these parameters, it can be determined that God's Word is conclusive to the quality of your relationship with Him. God's Word is powerful, complete, and accurate. The clarity of His Word will be your strength. So whatever you may be facing right now, focus on God's promise and the fact that was discussed earlier. Whatever He says, it will happen. So Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 and 13, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. And when you have finished the whole fight, you will still be standing. I thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.